friends, I greet you in the name of Jesus. Thank you for watching our program, The Truth with Kyria. Today we are going to study a portion of the Bible that is taken from the book of Judges, chapter 9, and we will start our reading on verse 8. Verse 8. The trees set out to anoint a king over themselves. They said to the olive tree, "Reign over us." But the olive tree said to them, "Should I stop producing my oil, with which they honor God and man by me, and go to wave back and forth over trees?" The trees said to the fig tree, "Come and reign over us." But the fig tree said to them, "Should I leave my sweetness and my good fruit and go to wave back and forth over the trees?" The trees then said to the vine, "Come and reign over us." The vine said to them, "Should I leave my new wine, which cheers God and man, and go to wave back and forth over the trees?" Then all the trees said to the bramble, "Come and reign over us." The bramble said to the trees, "If in truth you anoint me king over you, then come and take refuge in my shade. And if not, let fire come out of the bramble and devour the cedars of Lebanon." And I stop the reading there. I will give you its background, but it is just for information. Our topic is not about the background. The background is when you read the previous chapters, you see Gideon was called by God from Judges chapter 6. Gideon was called by God to fight the battles of Israel and deliver Israel from the hands of the Midianites. And he did. And then he died. He died leaving behind 71 sons, of whom only one, was born of a woman from Shechem. And that one born of a woman from Shechem, his name was Abimelech. When Gideon died, Abimelech went to his uncles from his mother's side and told them, "You know what? My father died leaving 70 other sons other than me, and really, do you want 70 something people to rule over you? Don't you think that it would be better if I, who belong to you because my mother is from here, don't you think that it would be better that I alone rule over you than me with all my brothers from different mothers?" And he enticed them into agreeing with him to kill all his other brothers. And they agreed. There was an exchange of money. Well, long story short, him and his people from his mother's side killed 70. Actually, there were 72 sons of Gideon. They killed 70 sons of Gideon, leaving 2, Abimelech and Jotham. Jotham had overheard about the thing, and he hid himself. So the 70 that they could lay their hands on, they killed them. And Jotham heard the whole thing and came. He arose. When he arose, now I will just read for you verse 7, which precedes the passage that we read. In verse 7, we read this: "When they told it to Jotham, he went and stood on the top of Mount Gerizim and lifted up his voice, cried out, and said to them, 'Listen to me, you men of Shechem, that God may listen to you.'" And after that, he spoke the parable that we just read, that the trees were looking for someone to rule over them. I can now tell you what the topic of today is. It is know your lane. Or shall I say, know your calling? Or if you prefer, run in your lane. How does it match what we have read? The olive tree told the other trees, shall I forsake my oil? The olive tree does not produce oil. It produces olives. It is the olives that are pressed that produce the oil. The tree knew that by the time his fruit is out, it will go through pressure so that what is really precious in him will come out. And that is the olive oil. And that olive oil is, it has many uses, but one that is the most valuable is that it anoints kings. He said, shall we read it again? Verse 9, the olive tree says, should I stop producing my oil, with which they honor God and man by me, and go to wave back and forth over the trees? The olive tree had foresight. The olive tree knew that he produces olives, but he knew it doesn't stop there. The olives go through a process, and that process is a painful one, and it is a long one. It is a process that takes the best out of the olive tree through the fruit. The olive tree knew its ultimate goal and said, as I assess my ultimate goal, which has to do with God and with men, and you come before me trying to entice me into rulership over trees, I'm asking you, when you weigh these two, which one is heavier to your own understanding? Shall I forsake producing an oil that honors God and men just for the sake of swaying over trees? The olive tree never said, yes, I will rule over you. No, I will not rule over you. But to the wise, half a word is enough. The olive tree left them with a question. And that question, the way it was asked, just meant, I know what my calling is. I know where I am supposed to stand. You cannot entice me into doing something else that is less valuable. I cannot drop what makes my life a worth living life to go satisfy your own ambitions. Forget it. The trees then left the olive tree, went to the fig tree. We read it, but let us go back there. Verse 11. The fig tree said, should I leave my sweetness and my good fruit and go to wave back and forth over the trees? The fig tree knew that it produces a good fruit. For those of you who are familiar with the Bible, remember when Jesus was on this earth, the only one thing he ever cursed was a fig tree. Because Jesus was hungry and he reached a fig tree and he wanted to pluck a fig from it, and he realized that this fig tree only had leaves. It didn't have any fruit. So he got upset and he cursed the fig tree. That is another topic altogether. But this fig tree in this parable is telling the trees, I know my calling. My calling is to produce a fruit which is good and sweet. The olive tree produces a fruit that, once pressed, produces oil. Oil for upliftment. Now for the fig tree, he says, my own is to produce a fruit that is good and sweet, that people like eating, and that is good for their health. The master of the world himself, Jesus, got hungry. He wanted to eat what? A fig. And he didn't find any on that tree. which is another one. Okay, the trees did not give up. The olive tree had done their offer down, okay? The fig tree did the same. They didn't stop there. They went for the vine. Verse 13. The vine said to them, should I leave my new wine, which cheers God and man, and go to wave back and forth over trees? He said, my wine. And you see, the vine did the same thing as the olive tree, because the vine does not produce wine, does it? The vine produces grapes. How do you get wine from a vine? You take the grapes, you work on them, you press them, you let it ferment or whatever. Which says what? That the grapes are to go through a process that is painful as well, and that is long as well, same as the olives. And these trees, they had foresight. They knew that what comes out of them raw is not the final product. That there is a process after the fruit has been taken away from them. They follow through, they follow up, and they know when the fruit had left them, what it goes through to produce the best of them. And these trees, be it the olive tree or the fig tree or the vine, all of them turned down the offer. Remember, I told you our topic is run in your lane. Know your calling, run in your lane. Which one is the most honorable? To be a specialist of the production of an oil that honors God and man, or to sway over trees? Which one is the most honorable? To produce a fruit that is sweet to the taste and good for the health of men, or to sway over trees? Which one is the most useful, the most honorable? To produce wine that cheers up people, that brings in them, I'm not talking about alcohol, drinking alcohol and getting drunk. I'm reading the Bible to you. And if you don't want to go as far as to talking about wine, whether it is cider or whatever, you can stop at the level of grapes. Grapes are good, they are tasty, they are sweet, and they are good for the health. These trees knew the lanes and decided to stick to the lanes. And it is what Jotham took as an example to build up a parable and tell the murderers of his brothers, which were led by his other brother, Abimelech, to tell them that you people, you have dropped the honor of your life as olive trees. You have dropped the goodness and sweetness of your life as like the fig tree. You have also dropped the cheerfulness that God has put in you, that even the vine acknowledges, to turn and go put yourselves under the bramble. And the bramble even threatens you, saying that fire will come out of you, of it to consume you. Look, at this point in time, I will go to the end of the matter, even though we haven't read the whole thing. But you know, from verse 16, we read up to verse 15. In verse 16, Jotham continues. After he had told the parable, he now comes back to the matter of the day. He says, now therefore, if you have dealt truly and righteously in that you have made Abimelech king, and if you have dealt well with Jerubbaal, who is Gideon, and his house, and have done to him according to the deserving of his hands, for my father fought for you and risked his life and delivered you out of the hand of Midian, and you have risen up against my father's house today and have slain his sons, 70 persons, on one stone, and have made Abimelech, the son of his female servant, king over the men of Shechem, because he is your brother? If you then have dealt truly and righteously with Jerubbaal, Gideon, and with his house today, then rejoice in Abimelech, and let him also rejoice in you. Verse 20, but if not, let fire come out from Abimelech and devour the men of Shechem and the house of Milo. And let fire come out from the men of Shechem and from the house of Milo and devour Abimelech. When you go to the following chapter, when you read through, you come to the fulfillment of the curse, because at that point in time, Jotham was cursing the people of Shechem. When you read the rest of the story, which I won't tell you, I'm just summarizing, it is sweeter when you read it yourself. You will see how they killed each other, how the prophecy of Abimelech, or of Jotham, which was actually a curse, came to pass. We are still on our topic. I want to show you someone who decided not to run in his lane. Just one person. I told you today will be short. Let us go to 2 Samuel chapter 18. 2 Samuel chapter 18. I've been led just to deal with that. We are going to read from verse 19 to 30. But let me give you the background. Absalom, the son of David, had risen against David in rebellion and decided to take over the power over the nation, rulership. He proclaimed himself king. And David, who had never lost a battle all his life long, decided not to fight his son. He ran away. He ran with those who were faithful to him. They all followed him. He was the legitimate king, and Absalom was not. But he decided not to fight for his position. He went away with many of his people. Long story short, there was a battle in which Absalom got killed. Actually, he didn't get killed on the battlefield. Read it, because it will take me out of my topic. But when all was done, when Absalom got killed, then the people who were fighting were admonished not to continue, because they were all brothers. In the kingdom, some had taken side for Absalom, and some had remained faithful to David. So it was the same nation that was divided into two. And when Absalom got killed, there was no point again for any kind of battle among the people. So they stopped the battle. Now, we are going to read from verse 20, as I told you. Verse 19. Then Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok, Zadok being the priest, said to Joab, Joab being the commandant of the army of David, he said, let me now run and carry the king news how Yahweh has avenged him of his enemies. Meaning he was planning to run to David, who was in the city, and tell him that the battle is over. The war is over. Your enemies are destroyed, And the first of them is Absalom. But the thing is, David, before they went to fight, told all of them, the generals of the army, he said, please be careful with Absalom. Let nothing bad happen to him. Yet, in the process of the battle, some way, somehow, he didn't get killed on the battlefield, but as he was walking, running here and there, that got stuck in a tree, and his donkey went away, his mule went away. So he got suspended in the tree, and people went to Joab to tell him. And Joab said, you should have killed him. So Joab himself went and killed Absalom. He went with 10 young men. Now, Joab was the uncle of Absalom. He was a cousin to David. He knew when David said, do not touch Absalom. But he also knew that Absalom was out of order. Absalom was standing against the divine calling of David. And he was standing against the divine order of God for Israel. So even though David said, do not touch Absalom, Joab, as the general of army, knew that the problem was Absalom. So he killed Absalom. And at the end of the day, I'm back to our reading. Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok, the priest, says to Joab, let me now run and carry the king news how Yahweh has avenged him of his enemies. And Joab said to him, you must not be the bearer of news today, but you must carry news another day. But today you must carry no news, because the king's son is dead. Is it clear to you and me? I think so. Verse 21. Then Joab said to the Cushite, go tell the king what you have seen. You know, the Cushite was a foreigner. The Cushite was a foreigner. Let me pause here to tell you something. In my culture, we say someone whose teeth are always out. You know, there are some people, the way their mouth is, the way their lips are, it is as if they are always laughing like this. And we say in my culture that someone who is like that, that even when they are not laughing, they look as if they were laughing. You don't send such a person to give the news that someone is dead. Imagine someone coming to you to announce to you that somebody is dead, and the person is like, hey, I have come to tell you that someone is dead. All teeth out. It will look like a joke. You will think that this person is laughing. Meanwhile, the person is telling you what has really happened. Now, in this case, here is Ahimaaz saying, I want to run and give news to the king. And Joab says, you can give news to the king, but not today. Today, definitely not. Because the news that are to be brought to the king today, they involve telling him that his son is dead. The good news is the battle is over. The good news is your throne is no longer in jeopardy. The good news is, since the battle is over, you can go back to your city, go back to your palace, and sit again on your throne. That is the good news. But the bad news is, for such a result to be achieved, it took the life of your son. Because he was the cause of everything. He was at the origin of everything. And without him, people had no other reason to fight. The moment he fell, that was it. Hit the shepherds, and the sheep will scatter. The moment Absalom was out of the way, everything came back to the normal. Now, how do you go and tell David everything is back to the normal, and your son Absalom that is so dear to you is dead? So Joab told Ahimaaz, no, you can't go. And sent the Cushite, who is a stranger. A stranger will have no kind of emotion to tell you this person is dead. He has no family link with him. He's not a relative. Even Joab himself could not go and tell David, because, as I told you, he was the cousin of David. He was the uncle of Absalom. And actually, he's the one who killed Absalom. How does he go to David to say, Absalom, who is my nephew and is your son, I killed him? He can't. And Ahimaaz is the son of the high priest. And Joab says, no, as the son of the high priest, as a priest yourself, you cannot carry this kind of news to the king. Any other news, yes, but this kind of news, no. He says no. And he calls the one who can claim no relationship, no family relationship with the king or with Absalom. That is the one he calls. He says, Cushi, the Cushite, go and tell the king. And he knows this one will deliver the message. The way I can tell you, oh, the sun is up or the sun is down. So that's it. So Joab, verse 21, says to the Cushite, go and tell the king what you have seen. He doesn't even tell him exactly what to say. He said, what you have seen. And the Cushite bowed himself to Joab and ran. Verse 22. Then Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok, said yet again to Joab, but come what may, please let me also run after the Cushite. Okay. Joab said, why do you want to run? My son, why do you want to run, since that you will have no reward for the news? Verse 23. But come what may, he said. Ahimaaz said, I will run. Joab said to him, okay, run. Then Ahimaaz ran by the way of the plain, and he even outran the Cushite. 24. Now David was sitting between the two gates, and the watchman went up to the roof of the gate to the wall, and lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, a man was running alone. The watchman cried and told the king. The king said, if he is alone, there is news in his mouth. Then he came closer and closer. The watchman saw another man running, and the watchman called to the gatekeeper and said, behold, a man running alone. The king said, he also brings news. The watchman said, I think the running of the first one is like the running of Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok. So even the running of the son of Zadok is known to the gatekeeper, to the watchman. Ahimaaz has been running before to bring news. So this time as he's running to come, he has outrun the Cushite. He is the first one, the closer to the gate. They recognize his way of running. And here we are, the watchman says, I think the running of the first one is like the running of Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok. Then the king, David, says, oh, he's a good man, and he comes with good news. Really? This tells you about the office of Ahimaaz and his identity, his reputation, his pedigree, his credentials and his pedigree. He's known as a carrier of news. He's known as a carrier of good news. He's known as a runner. He has a special way of running. The king says, one man running is bringing news. Another one running behind is also bringing news. The first one running like Ahimaaz, if it is Ahimaaz, he's bringing news, but not just news. Good news. Then, verse 28, Ahimaaz called and said to the king, all is well. He bowed himself before the king with his face to the earth and said, blessed is Yahweh your God, who has delivered up the men who lifted up their hand against my lord the king. The king said, is it well with the young man Absalom? You mean this is a time of war? Ahimaaz is coming to tell the king everything is now well. Those who have lifted up their hands against you, God has vindicated you of them. God has taken them out of your way. All that King David finds to say after he has heard that is it well with a young man, Absalom? Meaning all his heart was turned towards Absalom. Next, Ahimaaz answered, when Joab sent the king's servant, meaning me, even me your servant, I saw a great tumult. There was a commotion, he means. But I don't know what it was. When you read the whole chapter, I bet you, I dare to say, you will see no commotion. There was nothing called tumult. There is nothing like that. But when David asks Ahimaaz, is it well with Absalom? Ahimaaz now starts telling stories. He says, when Joab sent me, I saw a great tumult, but I don't know what it was. There was no tumult. Then, verse 30, the king said, come and stand here. And he came and stood still. In another version, you will see, David said, come and step aside. And he stepped aside. And I can tell you, read the rest of the Bible, you won't see any mention of Ahimaaz again. Surprised? Okay. Study. If you see him again, then that might be mistake. But you will know the point I'm making. Then, verse 31. Behold, the Cushite came. The Cushite said, news for my lord the king. For Yahweh has avenged you today of all those who rose up against you. The king said to the Cushite, is it well with the young man Absalom? Same question. The Cushite answered, may the enemies of my lord the king and all who rise up against you to do you harm be as that young man is. Then the king was much moved and went up to the room over the gate and wept. As he went, he said, my son Absalom, I wish I had died for you. Absalom, my son. This is the end of the chapter. But I will read, let me move to 2 Samuel 19. I read the beginning of it. From verse 1. Joab was told, behold, the king weeps and mourns for Absalom. Verse 2. The victory that day was turned into mourning among all the people, for the people heard it, said that day, the king grieves for his son. The people sneaked into the city that day as people who are ashamed steal away when they flee in battle. The king covered his face, and the king cried with a loud voice, my son Absalom, Absalom, my son, my son. Verse 5. Joab came into the house of the king and said, today you have shamed the faces of all your servants, who today have saved your life, and the lives of your sons, and of your daughters, and the lives of your wives, and the lives of your concubines, in that you love those who hate you, and hate those who love you. For you have declared today that princes and servants are nothing to you. For today, I perceive that if Absalom had lived and all of us had died today, then it would have pleased you well. Now therefore, Arise, go out, and speak to comfort your servants. For I swear by Yahweh, if you don't go out, not a man will stay with you this night. That will be worse to you than all the evil that has happened to you from your youth until now. Verse 8. Then the king arose and sat in the gate. They told to all the people, saying, Behold, the king is sitting in the gate. And all the people came before the king. And I will stop there. Today we are told, run in your lane. David was the king of Israel. Absalom was his son. He was even the heir of the throne. But he decided to outrun his father. He decided to run into his inheritance ahead of time, before time. Like the prodigal son. He decided that his father being alive, he was going to snatch kingship from him. I will not tell you all the horrors that Absalom did. Study your Bible yourself. Absalom stepped out of his lane to run into a lane that only him could understand. David had two lanes in this story. He had one lane as the king of Israel, and he had another lane as a father, the father of Absalom. As the king of Israel, he did not fight to defend his throne when Absalom took it. He fled. As the father of Absalom, he ran in his lane in order not to harm his own son. Fathers are to protect their offspring, not to kill them. Now, as the commander-in-chief of Israel, which is a third lane, he spoke to the generals of his army and told them, as you are going out there to fight against those who have ganged up together with Absalom against me, against divine order in the kingdom, as you are going to fight, beware of Absalom, do him no harm. He, as the one running in the lane of the commandant-in-chief of Israel, he did the right thing by sending them to war, by telling them go and fight. But the instruction he gave about Absalom was that of the father. He was in a difficult position to run in at least two lanes. As the king, I have to retrieve my throne. As a father, I have to protect my son. Those two were contradictory at that moment because of the way Absalom carried himself. Absalom had become a threat to the kingship of David. Now, when David gave that instruction, Joab had clarity of mind to understand when the king was talking and to understand when the father was talking. Now, there's something we call in French raison d'etat, which is, I will try and paraphrase it, is, how can I say, priority of state. The priority of the kingdom then was not the well-being of Absalom. It was the recovery of divine order. So Joab heard the instruction, fine. All the generals heard it. Now when they went to fight, Absalom was not caught in the battle. The Bible says he had an abundant hair. He was tall. He was very handsome. His hair was so special that once in a year he will cut it and they will weigh it, and it was heavy. The man was tremendously handsome. He was a man of stature. And it got into his head. I'm so handsome, I'm so strong, I'm the son of the king, I'm the prince, I'm the heir of the throne. By the way, why should I wait for my father to grow old and to die? Let me take the kingdom. That is what he thought, and he took it. Now he went to battle. He was riding his mule. And what had made his head swell until it became so big, that nice hair actually entrapped him because it got stuck in a tree. And he could not undo that because the animal he was riding that was making him that high that his hair could get stuck in the tree, the animal went away from under him. So he found himself suspended in the air by his hair. And that is how he became so vulnerable. By the time Joab got the news, Joab went for him because he was a real source of all the trouble. Joab killed him. Now, Joab had his own lane. He had actually two lanes. One lane was the lane of the general of the army, the captain of the army, the second in command to David when it comes to war. That was one lane. As a man of state, he was the minister of defense. That was one lane, his official lane. Now he had another lane, which was the lane of the family. He was the cousin of David and the uncle of Absalom. He was the cousin of the chosen of God, and he was the uncle of the rebellious one. When he was facing the situation of Absalom not dead but just suspended in the air, that he could have helped to get down the tree, he shifted from the lane of the uncle into the lane of the man of state, the minister of defense. He dealt with the matter, killed Absalom. And that was not murder. It was bringing back divine order. Joab stayed in his lane. The lane, when you are running in two different lanes that God has given you, you ought to always assess priorities. You ought to always assess priorities. If you are to stand as a man of state, and that is when you are crying, you are missing the point. And if you are to be soft, this is the time for family, and you run and say, no, I have to take care of the state. The state has many other people to take care of it at that moment. God is a God of order. I will come back to another point later. Then, let us go for Ahimaaz. I have already told you. Ahimaaz wanted to puff himself up. He liked carrying news. But he didn't know, or he didn't remember, that he had an identity. That his identity was not just to be a carrier of news, but he was to be a carrier of good news. Even the way David described him, he said he's a good man. And he carries good news. Which means if the news is bad, as a good man, he won't carry it. But Ahimaaz lost it. He just wanted to carry the news. Enthusiastically. He did not see the other lane. By the time he reached there, what happened to him? He was told, step aside. Because the thing is, when you run in a lane that is not yours, you end up lying. He was asked, is it well with Absalom? He could not dare and deliver the message. He couldn't. Then he lied. Oh, there was a commotion. When I was sent to you, there was a commotion and I did not know what it was. Well, what kind of language is that? There was no commotion. So when you run outside your lane, you are likely to tell lies. You are likely to tell things that are not as though they were, and not to tell things that are as if you don't know them. That is what happened to him. Next, the king told him, step aside. Step aside means get out of the way. Get out of the stage. You are no longer on stage. You are no longer relevant. I'm no longer listening to you. No one is looking up to you. You are no longer meaningful. You are over. Your time is over. You are out of the picture. That is what happened to Ahimaaz. Why? Because he did not understand the season. Yet Joab told him, today. 3 times he talked about today. He said, today you cannot carry news. Today is not a good time for you to carry news. Today, if you carry this kind of news, you will get no reward for it. But Ahimaaz pushed and ended up somewhere without any kind of relevance. As we have reached this point, I pray for you and I pray for myself that we will not run outside our lanes. Let me come to the Cushite. The Cushite, his own was to carry news, whether good or not. He didn't have a double lane. He didn't have any familial link to anybody. He was a stranger in the land. No emotion, no sentiment. Give me the news, I go, I deliver it, finished. But even the way he delivered that news, you could see that he was not completely emotionless, sentimentless. He had a straight reasoning. He told the king, anyone who arises against you to harm you, let it happen to them what happened to Absalom. For him it was very clear. He was not talking about the son of the king. He was talking about someone creating disorder and wanting to harm the king. That was his priority. He couldn't see any other thing. It was not in the picture at all that Absalom is the son of David. What are you talking about? This one has arisen against the king and has to be dealt with. The Cushite delivered the message. He was in his lane, he ran in his lane, and even though Ahimaaz had outrun him after having taken off after him, the Cushite ran at a steady pace. When you know who you are and you know what God has called you to do, it doesn't matter if some take off before you. It doesn't matter if some take off after you and outrun you. As long as you know where you are heading and you steadily press forward, you will reach your destination and you will achieve what you have been sent forth to do. And it will be without harm. And you will remain relevant. Simple. The Cushite did his job. And that was it. Now, I said I'll come back to something later. It just came to my mind. Remember, in the Word of God, it is said so many times that you are the apple of God's eye. Now, let me bring this to you. You are the apple of God's eye. I am the apple of God's eye. Your children, your spouse, your parents, your siblings, let us say your beloved ones, no matter how much you love them, which one of them will you allow to touch the apple of your eye? Which one of them? That out of love. Oh, because I love him. Because I love her. And this person is coming against the apple of your eye. Will you allow them? I'm not talking about you going to lay down in the theater for the surgeon to operate a surgery on your eye because you have a problem of eye. No. I'm talking about, just a physical something. I'm not going further than that. The physical one. That we are talking, we love one another, and in the process of talking, I go against the apple of your eye. Will you allow me? I don't think so. In the same vein, you being the apple of God's eye and me being the apple of God's eye, God will not allow any of us to harm the other one. He loves you dearly, he loves me dearly, but he doesn't love any one of us more than the other in order for one of us to go and harm the other one with his blessing. It doesn't happen. So, what the Cushite is saying to David is, the order is very clear in this land. You are the king. And the kingdom is at peace and well established when you are seated on your throne and everything is orderly done. Anyone who rises up against you is out of order and has to be taken away. So it didn't matter that Absalom was the son of David and was his beloved, whatever, he was out of order. Let me just stop here. There is a lot that can be done, that can be said about running in your lane. I'll stop here by just telling you one thing, reminding us one thing. You know, when people are racing and they have their own lanes, if you are in a lane, I am in a lane, different, each one of us has his own lane, and I leave my lane to run in yours, by the time we arrive, even if I arrive first, I will be disqualified because I'm arriving in a lane that is not mine. What would happen then? My own lane in which I was supposed to run, no one has run into it, in it. Your lane where you were supposed to run and arrive, maybe first or second, I don't know, you run in it, me too, I run in it. At the end of the day, what is the result? Confusion. Let me bring it back to practical life. When, for example, your own, let us say, is to cook rice, and another one is to cook soup, and then you decide not to cook the rice, you go and you cook the soup. And the one who is cooking the soup is still cooking the soup. At the end of the day, what will we have on the table for a meal? You and me are different, but we are complementary. Jesus said, you are all members of my body. You cannot have two left hands. You cannot have two right feet. Each part of the body ought to serve in a certain way. May we allow our brethren, our sisters and brothers, to play their own role and to do it to the best of their abilities. And may we allow ourselves or work on ourselves in such a way that what we can do, we will do it the best way. I was sharing recently, a few minutes ago, I would say, with a dear friend of mine, about God saying that we will be the head and not the tail. Can we all be heads? If all of us are heads, who can be the tail then? And it is very simple. When God says you will all be the heads, you will not be the tail, what he means is, in your own domain you are a head. In my domain I am a head. When we are in a choir, you sing bass very well, that is where you are the head. I sing, let us say, mezzo soprano very well, that is my domain. Another sister is a very good soprano, that is where she's the head. Another one is an excellent alto, that is where she's the head. The pianist is the one who excels in playing piano. He is the head there. If I jump from mezzo soprano into playing the piano, and the pianist jumps from there into singing alto, and the alto jumps from there to sing soprano, the soprano jumps to sing bass, what kind of choir do you think we are going to have? It doesn't work like that. But the thing is, when God calls more than one person, he establishes a headship. We all are heads in our different domains, but when we come together, one is to be the head of that group that we form. I will stop here and say goodbye. Say God bless you. May you remain the head that God has called you to be. May you run in your own lane and finish the course, the race, in such a way that God will say, well done, good and faithful servant. I am pleased in you. Enter the joy of your master. Till next time, stay blessed. Shalom.